I've flown the American flag on my front porch for over a decade, but it only became a problem the week Karen got elected HOA president. It was a calm Sunday morning when I found the notice on my door. Exterior display violation, it said in bold at the top. Below, it claimed my front porch flag was unauthorized visual signage and had to be removed within 5 business days to avoid a $75 fine. I read it twice, then a third time. My flag? It wasn't oversized. It wasn't tattered. It hung from a simple bracket-mounted pole I'd installed myself back in 2013, legal, tasteful, and placed exactly where I've always had it. I figured maybe it was a mistake, some automatic form. I walked over to the HOA mailbox drop to leave a note asking for clarification. But later that day, I saw her, Karen, walking the sidewalk with a clipboard, stopping at mailboxes and snapping photos. She saw me on the porch and gave a tight, fake smile. "You'll want to get that flag down," she said, pointing toward it. "It's not compliant with our new decor standards." I told her plainly, "That flag's been there longer than you've lived in this neighborhood." She didn't flinch. "We've had complaints. It's politically charged to some." "Politically charged?" I said, "That's the United States flag." Karen just blinked. "You'll need to remove it or face the fines." I didn't argue. I simply walked inside and pulled out the folder I keep in my home office labeled HOA and Property Docs. Right inside was a printed copy of the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act of 2005, plain as day. I scanned the violation, printed it, and stapled it to the federal statute. Then I slid it into a manila envelope and addressed it to the HOA board. The next day, the fine was posted to my account anyway. No explanation, no response. Just an automated balance update on the HOA portal with the words, "Non-compliance, exterior display." That's when I knew this wasn't confusion. This was targeted, and I was going to see just how far she'd push it. By the end of the week, 3 more violation notices had shown up. First, she claimed my flagpole bracket was damaging the structure of the porch beam, though it hadn't moved in 10 years. Then she said the fabric of the flag posed a fire hazard. Finally, she tried a noise complaint. Yes, apparently a flag can flap too loudly. It would have been funny if it wasn't costing me $25 a day in fines. I emailed the board. No response. I called and got a voicemail. That's when a neighbor, Ron, waved me over at the mailbox. "Hey," he said quietly, glancing around. "I got one too. Mine's a Navy flag hanging out back. Karen says it's unapproved symbolism." Turns out I wasn't the only one. Another woman down the street had her seasonal garden flag flagged as excessive personal expression. A retired Army couple got a citation for an eagle sculpture near their porch. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules, she was rewriting them. At the next HOA meeting, I showed up early and brought a copy of the federal law again, highlighted this time. I stood calmly and asked to address the board. Karen smiled wide and said, "Homeowners may speak during open comments." I stood, laid the document on the table, and said clearly, "You are in direct violation of federal law. U.S. Code Title IV, Chapter 1, the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act. No HOA can prohibit the proper display of the American flag on private residential property." Karen cut in immediately. "Federal law doesn't apply to HOA agreements. We're a private entity." That's when one of the board members, an older gentleman named Ed, leaned forward and asked, "Are we sure about that?" Karen turned to him, eyes sharp. "Ed, we've discussed this." But I could tell she hadn't, not with him. The room was quiet. I finished calmly. "I'm not asking for a fight, but I'm not removing that flag, and if you keep issuing fines, I will involve a real attorney." Karen tapped her pen, clearly rattled. "We'll review and respond in writing." They didn't. 2 days later, she added another fine, and that's when I made the call. Not to the HOA, to my lawyer. My lawyer's name is Mark. No flashy office, just a local guy with 3 decades of property law experience and an attitude I appreciated. Calm, no drama, but he didn't like bullies. He looked over every notice, every photo of my undamaged flag bracket, every HOA email. Then he asked a simple question. Did they actually vote on any of this? That's what broke it wide open. We sent a certified letter to the HOA's registered address, quoting the Freedom to Display the American Flag Act and requesting, politely but firmly, that all fines be dropped and all citations voided within 7 business days. We didn't get a response from Karen. We got one from Ed. He called me personally. "Hey," he said, I didn't know she'd been issuing citations on her own. She didn't bring these up in our last 2 meetings. That confirmed it. Karen had been going rogue, acting without board consensus, trying to push personal preferences as policy, and she did it under the radar, hoping no one would challenge her. But now the board knew, and I wasn't done. The following weekend, I heard from a neighbor who'd been warned not to do business with me, that I was under HOA litigation and about to be sued for defamation. It was laughable but dangerous. I told Mark. He added defamation and HOA abuse of power to the file. Then something changed. A large manila envelope showed up on my porch, not from the HOA, but from one of the board members. Inside was a stack of internal emails from Karen, printed out. She'd CC'd the board repeatedly, writing things like, "These flags are out of control. We need uniformity. I don't care what some federal act says. This is my neighborhood. If they want a legal fight, I'll bury them in fines." She hadn't just ignored federal law. She'd mocked it. She didn't think anyone would push back. And that's when Mark told me it was time for one final notice, not to the board, but to the HOA's insurance carrier. Because if they backed her actions, they were liable too. And nothing wakes up a board faster than a legal letter that says bad faith liability exposure. It only took 4 days after the insurance letter went out. I came home to find an unmarked envelope taped to my front door, the HOA's official response. Inside was a signed document stating that all fines had been rescinded and that my flag was, quote, fully compliant with current federal and HOA guidelines. But that wasn't the real win. That came at the next HOA meeting, which Karen didn't attend. Ed ran it instead. He stood up, cleared his throat, and calmly stated that due to procedural misconduct, Karen had been removed from her enforcement role effective immediately. He didn't say it harshly. He didn't need to. Everyone there knew. Turns out she'd bypassed the board on multiple violations, not just mine. She'd issued over 24 improper citations and tried to fine several homeowners for things like wreaths, flower pots, and mailbox paint. Some folks looked shocked. Others looked relieved. And then came the quiet part. Karen had resigned from the HOA entirely. She moved out 2 weeks later. No farewell barbecue, no apology letters, just a truck and a for sale sign. The flag, it never came down. In fact, after the news spread, I noticed something I hadn't expected. More flags started going up. My neighbor Ron hung his Navy one back up. A retired couple raised a tall pole in their yard with both Old Glory and a POMIA flag flying proudly beneath it. I didn't knock on doors or start a movement. But the message was clear. We weren't the problem. She was. And if you're enjoying this kind of true neighbor versus Karen justice, go ahead and like this video and hit subscribe. I've got plenty more real stories just like this one. And every single one ends with someone like Karen learning the hard way. So yeah, I never raised my voice. I never took the flag down. I just stood my ground, knew the law, and called her bluff. It cost me a few stamps, a few phone calls, and one good lawyer. But in the end, I still sit on my porch every morning with my coffee and watch that flag move in the breeze. That's all I ever wanted. And now nobody's going to take that away.